So number 3 says to state the center and radius of, and there we have an equation of the circle, but it's not what you're used to because that is the standard form to a circle. Now what we have to do is manipulate this equation to get it in center radius form, which I've already written out here up above. So we have to get it into that form. So the steps are on the left-hand side. All I'm going to do is follow the steps. The first step is to move the constant to the other side of the equation. The constant is the number that doesn't have a variable with it. Since right now it's positive 8, we have to subtract 8 from both sides. Okay, I'm going to actually do steps 2, 3, kind of 4 all at once here. So steps 2 and 3 say about grouping together the x terms and then grouping together the y terms. Okay, so let's do the x terms. So we're going to have x squared, and the other x is the negative 4x. And I'm going to leave a little space here, and you'll see what we'll do with that in a second. Okay, so then we're going to group the y's. So we have a positive y squared. Then we have a negative 6y. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to leave a little space. And then over on the right-hand side, we have 0 minus 8, which is negative 8. At this point, we are at steps 4 and 5 we're going to do. It says, take half of the x term coefficient. Now, the x term coefficient is a negative 4. I'm going to just do this off to the side. So I have a negative 4. So take half of that. Well, half of negative 4 is negative 2. And then it says to square it. Well, when I square a negative, I get a positive. So a negative 2 squared is a positive 4. And it next says to add this to both sides of the equation. So this plus 4, I'm going to put it here on my space. I'm also going to add it to the other side of the equation because whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side, right? Balance it out. We're going to do the same thing, but with the y constant, or the y coefficient now. So if you look on that step 5, again, take half of the y term coefficient. So the y has a negative 6 as the coefficient. We take half of it, so that would be a negative 3. And then we're going to square it. A negative 3 squared is a positive 9. It's always going to be positive when you square it. So I'm going to put plus 9 in the space here, and we're also going to add it to the other side of the equation. Okay, if you look at step 6, it says factor the perfect square trinomials. So what we have to do, we have actually 2 different trinomials here, one for the x's and one for the y's, and we're going to factor it, and it's going to turn out to be a perfect square trinomial, so we're actually going to get the same binomial twice. So we want to figure out, I'm going to actually factor over here onto the left, because once you get good at this stuff, you can just do it within the problem. But right now, we got to go back to algebra and kind of review how to do things. We've got to figure out what 2 numbers, when we multiply them, we get, hold on, I'm putting my x's in here. Okay, when we multiply the 2 numbers, we get a positive 4. But when we add the numbers, we get a negative 4. Well, that would turn out to be a negative 2 and a negative 2. See how we have the same binomial twice? So when you write it out in the actual problem, you can write it as x minus 2, that whole quantity squared. Plus, I'm going to do the same thing for the y's. Okay, so off to the side, I just keep erasing here so I have some more room. I'm just going to write the trinomial for the y's. And we're going to do the same thing. We have to find 2 numbers that multiply to positive 9, but add to a negative 6. So I'm going to write it out. And it's always going to be the same number. So in this case, it's negative 3 and negative 3. So when we go to our problem, we can write it out as y minus 3, that whole quantity, squared. So you're just factoring both of those. And the reason they're called perfect square trinomials, if you look at the last, the constant in both of the trinomials, we had a 4, we had a 9. Those are both perfect squares. Then over on the right-hand side, you just want to combine these numbers. So negative 8 plus 4 plus 9 gives you 5. Now we have our equation in the center radius form for a circle, so we can find the center and the radius now. So the center, remember, it's really minus h minus k, so the signs change. So the center is going to be a positive 2 and a positive 3. And over on the right, if you remember, this is equal to the radius squared, so we would have to take the square root of 5 to get the radius. Well, the square root of 5 is long decimal, so you're just going to leave it as radical 5. And here is our center and radius.